All right. Thank you, Chanel, and welcome everybody to a new month of Michael's classes. We're going to be doing a theme of abstraction this month, and we're going to be working in acrylics. So this is a bit of a little bit of a change. It's it's not a theme per se, but it is an approach to making art and making images. So hopefully we'll have a lot of fun with this. I'm going to highlight three different artists this month. Paul Cezanne, which is what we're going to do today, and then Georgia O'Keeffe, and then later on we'll do Pablo Picasso. But first I want to give people kind of an overview. Like when we say abstraction, what is it? What does that mean? What is that all about? And I want to get into that in a little bit here and just show you a few pictures and give you a kind of an evolution of how abstraction kind of developed over the years. But before we do that, I do want to go over the supplies and show you a few things that will be handy to have as we progress through the month of February and specifically today. So first off, I'll do the obligatory painting supply list. And I am going to be fairly limited in my palette today. If you were here last month, you know that I kind of had these, 24 set of paints. I'm not going to be having that approach. If you've got more paints, that's absolutely great. But if you minimally have these, everybody should be fine. And I'm just going to kind of read this off here. So you'll want some titanium white or zinc white, or hopefully you don't have lead white, but any white will do. Also, I don't have on here black, but I am going to use black today, especially because Paul Cezanne was an artist who uses a lot of black. And then I've got yellow ochre and raw umber, which are two earth tones. And then ultramarine blue, cadmium red, cadmium yellow. Those are the three primary colors. If you have another type of blue, say a cobalt blue or even a phthalo blue, that'd be fine. Red also has a variety of hues to it. And then yellows also, you have some choice there. The other thing that I'm going to use is the acrylic gel medium, which is basically think of it as like thick water. Instead of thinning your paint down with water, we can use gel medium. That works great. And then a rag or paper towels for cleaning things up. Acrylics are water soluble, so you'll need something to hold that in. And then a variety of acrylic paint brushes, acrylic/oil paint brushes. You generally don't want to use watercolor brushes. They're just not hefty enough to kind of move this rather thick and viscous paint around. So let's see, what else? Cotton or linen, canvas, and then wood or paper, all of which can be what you're painting onto. If you can even paint on like cardboard or something like that, but canvas is what I'm going to be painting on. But if you've got something else that's somewhat rigid, that is great for working with acrylics. It should be ideally treated with a gesso, which I'm going to get into when I start showing the demo. I'll just show you what all that's about. And then some sort of palette to put all your paints on and mix things and stuff like that. So that's the supply list. So hopefully you've got all that. And the next thing I want to show you is the painting that we're going to be working from. So this is a painting by Paul Cezanne, who's a French artist, sort of around the Impressionist era. So that's like 1860s to 1880s in France mainly. There was Impressionist movements in the United States and elsewhere in Europe. But when we think of the Impressionists, we think of the French. We think of Monet and Pissarro and Cézanne and some others of that era. So this is the painting that we're going to work from. So if you want to take a screenshot, I always give people the opportunity in the beginning of class to take a screenshot of this, and then they can just sort of drag it off to the side and then get a bigger version. You'll have a smaller version, like a little thumbnail up in the corner, but it's kind of nice to have a bigger one. I have one pulled off to the side of my screen, and it really helps when we're working to have that bigger one. Okay, so that's everything. And as usual, if you have questions, something doesn't make sense or something jogs your memory or jogs your imagination and you want to ask a question, just type it in the chat, and then it will be relayed to me, and then we can discuss that as we're moving along here. So that's the basic procedure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about abstraction. So in art, when you're making a picture, like if you're making, let's just say you're making a picture of a flower, you're not actually making a flower. You're making a picture of a flower. So that's an abstraction. If you're making a picture and it looks like a flower, that's close to reality, but it's obviously not a real flower. What abstraction means in sort of art historical terms is you're not worried with making it explicitly realistic. So if we think of realism, we think of people like during the Renaissance or during the realist movement, where it's made to look pretty close to what you're painting. And abstraction came about, and I'm just going to click over here to some pictures here. So this is a painting that is very, 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 very old. And it's a cave painting, probably tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. I didn't date this one. But this is roughly some animal that was around during the cave era. So we know what it is, but it's clearly not identical to what that animal looked like. So this is definitely more of an abstraction than, say, something like the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa is a very close representation of the person that was sitting for this painting. So this is more considered a realistic painting or a representational painting. So that's a little bit different. And we have to remember this painting here was done in like around 1500. So there was no photography, there was no digital imagery, nothing like that. So the only way people had to kind of say, what does Aunt Susie look like? They would have to paint a picture or draw a picture, because there was no way to take a picture and send it to people. So this was pre technology. So artists were really the only ones that could sort of convey this. And then as time progresses, and this is all more or less in Western art. So, you know, if we're looking at Islamic art or African art or Chinese brush paintings and things like that, they have a very strong abstract tradition as well. You know, they'd paint like a crane or something, and it would look like a crane, but you know, it wouldn't have every single feathery detail on there. This is an artist who, you know, you look at this and you go, oh, that could have been done like by an artist in New York in 1950. But this is actually an English artist, done in the late 1700s, early 1800s. This is JMW Turner. And this is an abstraction. And these were met with a lot of ridicule when he put them out. A lot of people looked at that and they, oh, that's just a stain on a canvas. There's no painting there. Where's the portrait? Where's the ship on the sea or something like that? But it is clearly it's a painting, and it's sort of landscapey, but you can't really tell. So abstraction sort of lends itself to a little bit of imagination on the part of the viewer, if you want to think of it in those terms. Once photography comes around in the late 1800s or the mid 1800s, artists start going, hey, they're going to put us out of business because there's lots of ways to get images now. So artists started experimenting with different ways of making art. Instead of, you know, making things look like the Mona Lisa, they were more interested in maybe mixing colors in a different way, or working, in this case, working outdoors. This is a haystacks painting by Claude Monet, probably from the late 1800s, like about 1875 or something like that. So artists started experimenting once technology started catching up with the idea of making images. And once that happens, things really kind of exploded. This is another painting by Cezanne. This is clearly a landscape. There's a mountain there, but it's definitely a very personal interpretation of that place. So abstraction takes into account, hey, what color do I want to use? It's not necessarily the color that I see, but the color that maybe I feel, or I feel best represents this place. And then you start getting into the modernist or the pre-modernist era, I guess you could say, like in the early 1900s. This is Picasso and Cubism, where he starts kind of flattening everything out. So he's not really interested in fooling your eye into thinking, oh, this is a person and this is what they look like. This is obviously an abstraction of a very long abstraction away from the reality of what's going on. And then here we are into the 1950s in New York. This is an artist named Willem de Kooning, obviously playing very freely with shapes and colors and the way he's making marks and things like that. And then this is pure abstraction. There's no subject matter anymore. There's no person here. There's no landscape. This is Jackson Pollock, and Jackson Pollock said, something along the lines of, I don't need nature, I am nature. He just sort of used colors and would drip the painting right over the canvas. There's actually some really cool videos on YouTube where you can see him painting this way, and he uses kind of sticks to dip it into house paint and drips it all over the canvas. And then it doesn't have to be all splashy and bold like this. It can be much more geometric and kind of very solid and crisp edges and things like that. This is an artist named Frank Stella, who was around the time of Willem de Kooning. They kind of overlapped. I think they even knew each other. So we've sort of taken the whole gamut of abstraction. It's been around forever, but in terms of Western art and kind of how it developed, a lot of it has to do with the role of photography and technology and artists sort of trying to find a way to work things out. So thought I wanted to give you a little bit of that before we get into this month's stuff. And I think we're ready to go. If anybody's got any questions, again, you can always type them in the chat. So let's start with our painting. Once again, I'll give you this one last snapshot here, and then we'll go to our setup. So I just want to tell you how I've set things up here. This is a piece of canvas that I have taped to a piece of wood. See, like this is the stuff I pretty much always use. And if I'm working upright on an easel, I almost always have a piece of wood to kind of give me a rigid surface to work on. The exception to that might be if I have a canvas stretched, like there's canvas here, and then there's just little wood bars along the edges here that kind of hold it suspended over that. So if I'm working on canvas, I'm either working on it like this, mounted on some wood, or I'm working it on stretcher bars. And this is a little canvas pad. You can buy these, you can buy this one at Michael's. This is sort of the Artist Loft brand, but there's tons of different brands that sell them like this. And it basically is just a pad of canvas. And you can see this one has one side that's really, really white and really shiny. This one, I don't know if you can see it quite well. This one is slightly off color. It's a little bit more beige. So you can kind of see the difference there. This is more beige, more buff. And then this is pure white. This is the side you want to paint on. Sometimes they gesso them on both sides. This one only has one side. And what I did with this one is you can paint right on this. This is ready to go. It's already treated with gesso. I wanted to add a little bit of texture to it. So I just took some gesso, just regular old white gesso. There's sort of a thinner version, and then there's a thicker version, sort of the professional gesso. So this actually costs about the same as this. This is bigger, but this you only need probably like 1 or 2 coats. This you probably need at least maybe 2 or 3, or maybe even 4 sometimes. So you can get either one of them. They both do the same job. You just got to sort of read the instructions and see how much they recommend that you put on there. And then after I put that extra layer of gesso on there for a little bit of texture, a little bit of tooth to it, I use this color here, which is a mix of our raw umber and our yellow ochre. And I just kind of got a lot of water and just kind of scrubbed it on there. And I do that almost in every painting that I do to get rid of that really bright white. And also, if you look at the painting over here, there's a lot of that sort of buff color. It's very like this color right down here is very close to what's on here. So I'm kind of looking at that. I could have done it in blue if I wanted to, but I just sort of chose this one because it's something that I normally do, and it's kind of a force of habit. And I mixed these two just because this is slightly a little bit too bright for me. So it's a personal choice. You really can do without doing this. You can do it, brighter color or a cooler color, whatever you want. But I like to do it, and I'll leave it up to you. But that's what the color looks like. It's sort of a kind of a dark brown, and then when you thin it out, it's not quite as dark. And then what I've done here is I've taken this color, that mix of the two earth tones, and then I've just added a little bit of black to it. Again, I could just go with this, but I had some leftover of this, and then I just threw some black in. So I'm just going to take a dark, somewhat neutral color, and that's what I'm going to start with. I always like to start kind of sketching things in. I didn't do a drawing on this one. Cezanne probably would have not done a drawing. I'm guessing. I didn't actually peek over his shoulder in 1875 when he painted this, but it's an educated guess. Because Cezanne he's not trying to, again, like I said, fool your eye. He's trying to kind of get you into the process of actually making this and how he comes up with decisions. He's interested in the process of painting and how the paint lays down and how the colors interact. So he's kind of experimenting a little bit as he goes. So I am going to take this brush. This is a nice round brush. I think it's probably about a 6 or whatever. And I'm going to use this kind of as like a pen. And I'm just going to kind of draw things out. So I'm going to get a little bit of water, just wet that. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this dark color that I've mixed up. Get a little bit more water on there. So it's, just about that consistency. So it flows really nice. And then I'm just going to kind of sketch things out. And if you've watched my demonstrations before, you know that I kind of have this approach of, you want to get the big stuff first and then work your way in. So what I want to do here is I kind of want to build this background frame here. If you look at that little over in the corner there's this little window frame that starts right up about here and then ends right down about there. So I'm just going to kind of roughly kind of draw that in. Maybe about like that, something like that. And then from here, maybe that angle's not quite that right. I'm not worrying about, obviously you can see, I'm not going to be too fussy about getting exactly right. And I'm just going to kind of build that frame that I was talking about. And so up here, there's another one. So just nice. I haven't had to get any new paint or anything like that. I'm just kind of blocking things in. There's a little bottle over here. Probably a wine bottle with those French. I like their wine. There we go. And then there's a nice little straight line that starts off kind of halfway between where this ends and halfway between, well, a little bit more halfway. Kind of goes right across like that. So again, I'm just trying to get it. I'm not worrying about, I'm covering up the vase and all that sort of thing. By the way, the title of this painting is Blue Vase, Still Life with Blue Vase. So if you're searching for it, or if you want to finish up after we go from here, that's what you're looking for. Just Google Paul Cezanne, Still Life with Blue Vase, and you'll get there. All right, so that pretty much gives me kind of my background frame. So now I can just sort of add in a little bit of kind of the related stuff. So as far as an abstraction goes, I would categorize, this is definitely like sort of early in the development of abstraction. It's clearly a still life with flowers and apples or oranges or whatever he's got over there. And it's definitely you know, the colors are somewhat realistic. But it is not exactly a realistic depiction. It's got a lot of sort of brighter colors. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of trying to line this up based on the frame that I have established here. So I'm just going to do the vase. Try and keep it somewhat accurate. And so this is the advantage of having done all of this before. I can kind of use that big general, you know, if you're describing something on a map, like, you know, let's say we're going to do a road trip. Where do we want to start? Well, I want to start in Chicago, and then I want to go to the West Coast. Well, the West Coast is pretty big. Well, let's go to San Francisco. So you can kind of just narrow things down. This is like, okay, we're in Chicago right here, and here's the West Coast, and there's the East Coast. You can kind of use kind of bigger ideas to get to the smaller ideas. Well, what do you want to do once we're in Chicago? Let's go to the Sears Tower. Let's go to the art museum or whatever. So I'm just trying to kind of establish the main points here. This big flash of greenery there. Got to get a little more water. Get a little more paint. Just basically a roadmap at this stage. This is kind of a term that I've used. And the good thing about using this color is if you look at Cezanne, he was definitely a fan of outlines and a fan of black. So this black is strategic. I mean, I kind of knew this going in that he would be using a lot of that. So I was definitely trying to get into the idea of his color palette. So just kind of working my way around here with these big green leaves. This looks like some irises, and the irises ultimately go all the way up to the top. So see how I just skipped up to the top? You sort of get to the edges and you work your way in as much as you can. I was sort of going from the bottom up, and sometimes you can get into trouble doing that. So I took a leap up and went somewhere else and tried to get that part of the canvas involved a little bit more. There we go. So just working my way back to the middle now, outside in kind of approach. Is that right? So now I can kind of reevaluate. All right, this probably needs to get a little bit bigger. So does that. All right, then we got this one, which comes right up underneath that one. And then we got this one, which almost comes up here. I'm not really painting it, so to speak, at this stage. I'm just laying it out. So this is an interesting little piece where this little mark here starts right up against that edge and then just kind of curls its way back in. There's a little bit over there. And I think that's pretty much the vase part. All right, and then we got to get, of course, our small things on the table. And what do we got? Round fruit number one. I think I'm going to go with apple. This could be a peach though. I don't know how many peaches they had in France though. It's not like they had a lot of trade with Georgia or wherever they would get peaches from in those days. There we go. Bum, 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 bum. Might even throw that little sense of a, don't worry about that, it'll come back on. Just putting a little bit of kind of the darker shadows in here just to kind of delineate things. Come on back right now. It's not listening to me. It'll be back. It never fails. Okay, I think I've pretty much got everything established. Now we get to mix some colors. So come on back. I'm going to clean my brush with that. If while you're waiting here, while we're waiting for our picture to come back, if you want to just put out your 3 primary colors, the blue, the red, and the yellow, that is what I'm going to do. And there we are, we're back. So I've got ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to start with that. And from there, I've got my red. I never put out acrylics kind of before I start because they do dry quickly. And here's a little trick for you. If you are working and you've got a painting that's gonna is gonna take you a few hours, just a little like plant mister, like a little spritzer, something like this, and you can kind of if they start to dry out, it's an easy way to just kind of dampen the paint and keep it open and active. All right, so what I'm going to do here, and this is where Cezanne gets really, you think, oh, what's that background? Oh, it's blue. Well, if you really look at it, it's like blue, it's purple, it's kind of grayish purple, dark red, reddish blue. There's all kinds of variations in here. I am going to start just by taking blue because it's predominantly blue. And I'm definitely going to put some red in it, but not a lot. Now that's clearly too dark. So in order to get that lighter, I will have to make what is called a tint of that. And tints need white. So I'll put out some white, and I'm just going to try and get kind of that root color that we've got up there. Cezanne. Now that's too light. There's going to be some of that in here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly add some of that blue on there. But if you're mixing colors and you're trying to make a tint, the way you want to proceed is kind of exactly the way I did, is get the color, get the basic combination of red, blue, yellow, whatever you're working with. And then you add that to the white. So the white is sort of becomes the root. And now you're just kind of changing the color a little bit by adding increments of this blue. So it doesn't get too dark too fast. Otherwise, you've got piles and piles of paint that you're not going to use because you mixed up the wrong color because it went too dark too quick. I feel like this maybe needs a little bit more red. So I am going to take care of that by just adding a little bit of red. So this is kind of a nice kind of mid-tone. And since we don't have 20 hours to spend on this, as Cezanne probably would have at least, I'm going to block this whole area in with this color. It's pretty much the most dominant color in the painting, along with this yellow ochre tabletop here. But I'm going to start with this. And I'm going to get a little mileage out of it by using some of our gel medium. So here's the gel medium. Gel medium basically does the same thing as water, except this paintbrush is dry and clean. So I would not do this with one that you're actively using. It's got some color on it. And I'm just going to put some of this medium off to the side here. So I don't want this to be really runny. But I do want it to give me a little bit more flow. So I'm just going to kind of block it in big, bold strokes here. And if you really look, if you've ever seen a Cezanne painting, you'll know what I'm talking about here. His brush strokes are visible. You can see like that's where he made a brush stroke, or that's where he's made a brush stroke, because you can see it. You can see the texture of it. You can see how the colors were pushed around. So this is sort of my root of what I'm working with. And in spots, he will have put a little bit more purple in, or he would have gone a little bit, maybe a little bit lighter. So you can kind of add it in. And what he's doing is this is sort of a precursor to cubism, you know, where everything is just flat and it's got lots of very geometric shapes. This cubism would not have happened if Cezanne was not around, or if Cezanne never existed. It may have come about, but it would come about a little bit differently, because Cezanne was very interested in kind of these facets of color. So as you're building this up, I'd really encourage you to kind of just lay in these little swatches, we'll call them, of this blue and its kind of roots and derivations of blues and purples and darks and lights, all within that range there. So I'm just trying to kind of establish that. And if you actually look around the flower, if you look at it really close, you can kind of see where he kind of carved it out exactly the way I did here. He just kind of went around it a little bit in spots. So, you know, just kind of have fun with this. You know, we're not trying to blend it so evenly. You know, if you see a little spot that maybe looks a little bit darker, just, you know, mix up a little bit more of this and kind of get rid of the white. So go a little bit darker, like right along the bottom here, it's a little bit darker. So I'll just throw that in. There's kind of a little line like that. So just play around with it. Just kind of experiment.
We have a question.
Yeah.
So the gel that you added to the color, we
Yep.
have somebody who's wondering what that was called.
Yeah, it's called Slow Dry Blending Gel Medium. This specific one that I'm using is kind of an Artist Loft brand. It's really nice stuff. They have it kind of all over the range. Like you can get really liquidy stuff. You can get stuff that's thicker and more like impasto or heavy. But it's basically just a thick, effectively, it's like a thick water. It dilutes the paint, so it makes it a little bit more transparent, but it keeps the consistency of the paint. And it's really, really useful for acrylic painting. It only works with acrylics because it is water-based. It doesn't work with oils. See down there, I mixed a kind of a lighter one. That's a little bit too light. So, you know, you can kind of just adjust things on the fly. And if you look at, again, if you look at Cezanne's painting, you can see what I'm doing is probably somewhat close to the way he would work. He'd go, oh, that seems a little bit, I want this shift to happen, but I don't want it to be quite that bold, or, you know, he'd make some adjustments as he's working. It wasn't a like, okay, I've got everything perfectly drawn out here and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be exactly this way. He knows exactly what it's going to be when it's done. It's more of he's letting the process and the paint kind of dictate maybe directions of where he's going to go with color choices and how dark and light things are going to be. So we're just kind of building up that blue background, that kind of recess where the shadow is. So playing around with a little bit of the purples. I'm not using, this is far more blue than it is purple, but there's definitely some purple in there. And there's green. I mean, I'm just looking at it. You can see how, you know, he threw in, and I'm just going to do it here just because he did it and it's part of the process. I'm just going to mix up a little bit of a green. So you got your root three colors here. And it's basically this, it's not any darker or lighter here, but you're shifting the color a little bit. So that does things like maybe there's going to be little echoes of green popping that these use to kind of activate this green in here. All right. Let's see, maybe a little bit darker down here. So I'll just take some of this blue. So this is really kind of a night, you know, you've got all three colors, you know, all three active primary colors kind of working together here. And they're all in here. The only thing that we haven't used yet a lot is red, but we still have it. I mean, it's still in there. It's just not quite as dominant. It's definitely a cool part of the painting. Cool as in not warm. whenever I say cool, I mean not like, ooh, wow, that's a really cool painting. It is a cool painting in the sense that it has blue in it, or purples, or a lot of colors that you would think of as having cool properties, like cold like water, cold like the night, something like that. So there's a lot of kind of darker kind of edges around here. I'm just kind of building this up. And, you know, this is a slight advantage here with acrylics, is there was a lot of layering done in these paintings. This is an oil painting. This would have been done in oils. But Cezanne would have to wait for all of this color to dry in order to kind of maybe put the next layer on. We don't really have to worry about that too much because acrylics dry pretty quickly. So for instance, this is a little bit lighter down here. I've already kind of lightened it up, but if I wanted to lighten it more, I don't have to worry about it mixing with the colors underneath, which is kind of a nice thing. All right, so I'm just gonna keep that as is because I want to move to other parts of the painting. You could spend a lot of time messing with that. I actually just saw this little bit here before I take this color out. There's a little bit of it over here as well. I'm just going to block that in. And that ends right about here. Yeah, and if I look, it goes kind of right across to that green. And you notice I'm not like taking tons of paint here and scooping it on and putting it on like cake batter, or frosting or something like that. I'm letting, you know, the underpainting, this color here, kind of pop through in spots. And, you know, if you ever look at paintings in museums and things like that, you'll see that a lot of times, you know, kind of the underpainting, the base color kind of creeping through a little bit. And then I mix all three of these to get kind of this bluish gray. And it's a little darker. And there's a little bit of that up in the corner. So you just kind of see where these different colors kind of sneak in and work their way around. All right, so that pretty much, oh, no, we got to do that bit too. Of course, how could I forget this little bit? So let's just continue with that. This is the second time I've cleaned it. It's all right. It's good to clean your brush every now and then, especially with acrylics, because they do dry out so quickly. And it's nice to kind of freshen your brush up a little bit. So let's just go right in here. A little more purple down here, so I'm just going to add some more red. And it's also slightly lighter in that spot. So just like around this little inkwell or whatever it is. Put that in there. There's definitely some nice little rosy spots here as well. So, you know, if you remember back to those pictures that I showed you in the beginning, like an artist like Willem de Kooning, you know, he's sort of drawing a person, but he's just experimenting with, oh, let's try a little bit of blue. Let's try a little this green in here. You know, it's a blue quality, but it's got lots of little flecks of different colors in here. And I think what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to go up here, because this up here is basically a lighter version of what's happening in this cool area. So I'm just going to take maybe this purplish color and then just going to tint that up a little bit. Maybe throw a little bit more blue in there. I mean, I'd say overall, this is a little lighter and a little bit warmer. So it's got a little bit more red in it. So that's kind of my thinking here. And then just put a little bit of medium in there. Let's see how that looks. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good rendition. So primary red, primary blue, definitely some white, a fair amount of white. And that pretty much covers that. Let's see if there's any more of that around here. I can throw some of that in there. There's definitely some little white flecks in here. you know, just to sort of, there's a little bit of this over here. You can kind of move it around. Okay, so let's go here. I want to get this area done, and I'm going to abandon that brush because it's pretty dirty, and I just want to change things up a little bit. So I'm going to go with a round just to change it up. There's no real reason for that. Maybe I'll go a little bit bigger actually. Yeah, let's try this one. See how this works. So I'm going to mix up this color, and this color here is pretty much close to this, but lighter. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this yellow ochre, put it right in the middle there. And let's see what else we got in there. I think that's going to be a good root for that. I might put a little bit of this in here, but there's definitely kind of an overall, a lighter. So it's somewhere in there, like almost all yellow ochre with a tiny bit of this yellow ochre and umber mix, and then a good amount of white. I want to see how this looks. I'm just going to run this right down here. And I'm just kind of dragging it down. And because this dries so quickly, I don't have to worry too much about, you know, all this blue kind of contaminating this yellow. And yellow is an easy color to contaminate. So that looks pretty good. There's not a ton of variety in these little strips here. So I'm not going to spend too much time with that. And then here, I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow and a little bit more white. And then I think I basically got my my base for this right in here. There's going to be some darker spots and there's going to be some lighter spots. But again, I'm just trying to get my basics down. And then over this, there's going to be a lot. And I'm not, you know, this color and this color are actually really close to each other. So I'm letting some of this just pop through. I'm not being like, oh, I've got to get everything colored entirely. So just letting the paint and the work you've already done in kind of staining the canvas. In my case, I don't know if any of you got to it, but it's good. It's kind of a good economical way to paint. Is this underpainting that I've already established has really helped me with some of those tones in here. Okay, and actually, I think there's a little bit of this color kind of in here, so I'm just going to throw that in. I may end up. Yeah, I don't even need to do that because that's kind of a waste. All right, so I've got pretty close to my main stuff in here. This big post here, it's kind of dark. It's kind of muddy. It's not really a blue. It's not really a yellow. It's kind of like like an earthy color. So I'm going to start with this, and I think I'm going to put a little bit of blue in it because I want to darken it up a little bit and maybe cool it down. That seems pretty good. Let's see how that looks. That's not too bad. And this is, I think, overall going to be a little bit darker than it actually is. But that's fine because like I did in here, I kind of modulated the color a lot. Oh, let's see, we're coming down to the home stretch here. About 15 minutes or so. Take some of that blue. It's a little darker kind of at the base. So you can see, you know, I was talking about abstraction. Cezanne's still looking at and responding to the sense of light. you know, because this is more in shadow right here, and then it gets up a little bit lighter up here. But he's also, you know, letting a little bit of the inventiveness of the medium kind of creep in and you know, sort of being a little bit more expressive with things, or rather than being totally beholden to, oh, it's got to look like a still life, or it's got to be exactly that way. So I'm just taking some of these yellow highlights. It's a little bit lighter. I'm just taking that tint of yellow ochre. And I'm just going to throw in a few little spots here, just sort of dragging, you know, not every mark has to be, you know, really carved in there. You can kind of just flick it on there just to sort of give it a little sense of looseness. All right, what else we got? Oh, there we go. I'm looking around, seeing what to do next. So you're not missing anything. I'm probably going to progress into the vase. So I'm going to try and start mixing up the blue, and that blue of the vase is really blue. So I'm going to be try and be pretty faithful to that color. See if we can mix that up. It'll be coming back soon. Here we go. So I'm just taking that ultramarine blue, and then it's obviously lighter. So I'm taking some white. There we go. So a little bit of white. So that's too light. So I just add a little bit more blue, and then a little bit more, and maybe a tiny bit more. And then I'm just, you know, letting some of these other colors come in there, because it's not a pure, it's not straight blue out of the tube, but it's pretty close. So I'm just going to try and get the basic root color of the vase. That's my goal here. And then the other stuff, oh, like the little modulations of that blue, I'll just tend to that in a little bit. And a lot of this is going to be defined a little bit more clearly when I put the black around the edge, and I'll do that. I probably won't get to every passage that has it, but I'll try to do it around the base, because it's kind of it's the title of the painting. So not worrying about any of the details, you know, like the little dark areas on here, just again, trying to establish this shape and this color. And you can see that there's also, you know, there's little areas that are a little darker, you know, not the black part that are on the edge, but, you know, a little touch of kind of this darker blue here. So what I did is I just took that blue that I mixed up over here and just added a little bit more of straight blue, and then just pulled a little bit of this in to kind of darken it up slightly. So I'm just kind of responding to the colors that I have on the palette, and that's definitely something that a lot of artists kind of do during the process. They go, oh, I've got this sitting here. It makes sense that it would relate to other things in the painting. And again, I'm not being really smooth with this. This is very direct painting. I'm not blending it and layering it too much. I'm just kind of trying to mix that color and just lay it in there and let it do its thing. So I got that. And I think what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to put this background on here, the black around it, just to show you how Cezanne used it. And he was very devoted to this idea. So I'm just taking some medium, giving the paint a little flow, and then just taking this kind of mixed up black that I had, and I'm just going to kind of go around the edge here. And I'm taking a nice little script brush. This is a size 4 here, and just trying to draw the shape a little bit. So this is where, you know, you would sort of hone things down a little bit. Really just trying to block that shape in a little bit more definitively. And, you know, if you go outside the lines or, you know, something's not exactly right, you can always come back with the blue and kind of tinker with it a little bit. All right, so this is going to be somewhat tricky here because you got this nice little. There's the lip. And then there's just these little recesses of dark in there. So that sort of gives you an idea of how Cezanne is using black. All right, let's do, since I've got this brush and we're moving along here, I'm going to use that sort of bluish tint that I had. I'm going to make it really, really light and just do this, do that plate behind them. And again, not trying to get too much into the detail here, just trying to establish the shape. And so this is where you can kind of carve out, like, oh, maybe that line's a little thick. I'm just going to come in there and do a little bit of vase surgery. So I picked up some blue along there, but there is a little blue sliver on there. Sometimes it works out in your favor, sometimes not so much. It looks like there's a little bit of yellow in there. So like right around here. So, you know, direct painting, just putting layers upon layers. And again, acrylics are really kind of ideal for this. And there's a little bit of purple. I'm just going to kind of go for it right here. I'm looking at the highlight. I'm kind of working in the light edge of the spectrum right now. There's a little hint of that happening. Doesn't take much, and it'll just kind of pop out a little. It's a little tiny hint of it right there. All right, so that's good. So now I'm just going to kind of go willy-nilly in here. Got just a few minutes left. I'm going to start popping out some of these white flowers. Let's see, I think this is one right here. I'm going to try and block these in. This one right here. One over here. Anything else? Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that green. I'm just going to use the same brush because it's doing nice things with the paint. So I'm going to actually go with this red, I think, first. So maybe a little red, little bit of primary yellow, and just kind of put in this, I don't know, what is it, camellia or whatever it is, and going really heavy with it because it's a pretty dominant red. And there's kind of a lighter red up here. So I'm just going to take maybe some of this, just kind of knock down the red a little bit. It's still red, but it's not nearly as red. But this flower up here is pretty close to that. Anything else in there? You know what? This might work for this one down here. I'll just throw that in. This is what you call speed tape. It's not speed dating, it's speed painting. It's just boom, 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 one color, next, next, next. Hello, how are you? This is good. I need you over here. I need you over here. We're just going to kind of throw everything here right at the end. Just get all this. There's a little highlight there. This. Now I'm going to go for that. This one right here. Can go right over top of this. This needs to be a little bigger. That's good enough for that. This bottle, let's do the bottle. I'm gonna take some of this. It's kind of a warm brown. So I'll just take some of this and throw in my primary red and just kind of block this in. Oh, look at that. Got lucky. Or was it luck? I don't know. It's kind of on the spot decision making here. All right, let's get up here. We got the purple. Well, it's like a game show. You guys got to get everything done. Got to get everything done under the wire. I'm going to try and do these purples up here. You don't have to work this fast. I'm just trying to give you as much to work with as possible, and then you can sort of do it at your leisure if you've got time. So this is kind of my impromptu purple iris color. I think it's pretty close. So, and the way I'm laying this in, I mean, I'm being a little bit flippant about it, but you know, this is, in terms of the way I'm making the marks, just kind of almost like calligraphy, you know, you're just sort of making, that's kind of what I think a lot of artists are doing. They're sort of responding to what's already happened, and they're trying to fit everything else in and kind of make it make sense. So it is a more intuitive process, I think, than a lot of more classical painting, where you're sort of building it up and getting the drawing just right, and then mixing your colors up ahead of time and using the colors that are sort of preordained and all that sort of thing. So you've got a little bit of inventive, not a little bit, a lot of inventive avenues. So I'm going to just come in here, pull in some of this dark color. There's still some blue in there. And a little bit of that in here. So really just kind of refining things a little bit. I want to get some of this green in here because there's a fair amount of it. Okay, and I'm going to try and mix up a green really quick here. So I'm going to start with this. It's not a real bright green, mostly, but it is definitely green. Well, this is good. I usually don't do a very good job of allotting how much paint I'm going to use, but I've done a fairly good job here. Not got too much. So this green here, it's more of kind of a forest green rather than kind of a bright garish green. Where else? I've missed a few colors in there, but it's pretty close. There's kind of a nice dark red in there. I want to get that. It's right next to that bright red. So I'm just taking this red here and mixing some of this dark that I've mixed up prior. Yeah, that seems about right. So it looks like a little streak of it over here. Anywhere else? Oh, maybe up in this flower. Some of this darker red. Let's see, what else? That's looking pretty good. Nothing's bursting. Anybody else see anything? What else do I need to do? What else should I do here? This little blue thing. Let's do that. I missed a spot. So I just took some blue and kind of mixed it up with that. With this darker color down here. I missed this little bit. I'm missing some flowers. I think maybe this is the blue of the background. So I'll just see if I can't go back to this original root color. And this is definitely something I haven't really touched on this too much, but you know, if you've got, I'm pretty much out of my blue entirely. I think that'll be fine though. Yeah. So if you find that you're like, oh, I put some flowers in here that don't actually exist, you can just kind of go back and do a little repair. And just enhancement. Okay. I missed the little scraps in here, but that's a pretty good rendition of Cezanne. I mean, I'm not going to be able to slide this into a museum and fool anybody, but it's a pretty good idea. And most importantly, it is a good approximation of kind of the working methods of how Cezanne may have done this. I did this way too fast and way too, kind of hectic, but that's what we do when we've only got an hour. Cezanne is much more methodical and kind of rhythmic with the way he puts things in. But hopefully you got the idea of what's going on. Maybe if we've got a few people that would maybe like to pop theirs on the screen, maybe do some spot highlighting. We can have a look if people want to just hold their painting up like so. Oh, there we go. From Amy. Yeah. All right, good. So you got everything blocked in, and you can kind of play around with that. Oh, look, you've got Crater Lake behind you. Nice. Angela. Oh, yeah. Very nice. That looks great. Yeah, you got most of it. Be sure to use those nice dark outlines on there. Yeah, like kind of like what we got here with Claudia's there. All those dark outlines really pop the different colors and different shapes out. So have fun with that darker paint to kind of organize things. Very nice, Claudia. Cindy. All right. Yeah, nice. Kind of a nice pastel palette you got there. Lots of kind of nice halftones and tints, and yeah, I think a lot of people sort of tend to go with paint right out of the tube sometimes. Have fun mixing it. Just, it's blue, but it's bluish red, or it's a lighter version of that color. So, always be willing to kind of push it in whatever direction. That looks great, Cindy. You got anybody else that's got one out there? All right, Sarah. Oh yeah, nice. I like the kind of the nice sort of swatches of color, kind of building it up in kind of a nice rhythm of different variations on that blue, especially in the background. It looks great. Very nice. And then Holly with an I. Yeah, nice. Yeah, that looks really good. You got this sort of the nice red-green contrast going on. Kelly and Greg. Is this a collaborative painting, or did one or the other do that? Just one of you. All right. Good. That's a nice setup. You got the composition really nice. You got everything sort of organized well. And you've got a lot of those colors kind of working in that patchwork effect that was really sort of Cezanne's hallmark. That looks awesome. Really nice. Whoa. Somebody's very fuzzy. I think if you hold it right under your face, Sayutu. Under your face, so we can see your face. It's blinking. Yeah, there you go. There it is. That's better. Oh yeah, that's good. There you go. Much better. Very nice. Yeah, just have, I see a lot of people have just sort of been working a lot slower than I have, which is great. Much better way and more productive way to do it. An easy painting to find online. So if you want to continue with this, still life blue vase with still life, or still life with blue vase. Scott. All right, nice. That's right. You sort of went with a little bit more bold blue color. That looks pretty cool. Looks nice. Yeah, that works. And then Maria. Oh yeah, that's very good, Maria. Some of those nice dark outlines in there will really pop those shapes out even more. It looks really good. And getting the sort of the balance of the lights and darks is really important, so that that still life is pretty dark, as you can see that here is in Becky's, how that green pops out from that blue in the background. That's definitely something that you can see in the original, sort of those really dark shapes that he punctuated in that still life painting. Great, Becky, awesome. And Ren, nice. Much darker palette, which really kind of has a nice moody effect to it, with those little bright spots coming out from that dark, all that dark. That looks really good. You've got a garage studio, it looks like. Nice. Louise. Oh yeah, that looks really good, Louise. Very nice. Some people working a little bit bigger, which is good. Mine incidentally was 9 by 12. This painting I think is bigger than that, but not that much bigger. Probably something about what we see with Luis's there. It's probably in that maybe 15 by 20, something like that. 16 by 20, something like that. Yeah, it looks really nice. You got the values really good, the lights and the darks in that one. Lisa, yeah, very nice. That looks, yeah, you got the outlines there that kind of really accents the shapes. That's great. Yeah, very nice, Lisa. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Well, that was great. I feel like I broke a sweat with that one. I was just working so fast there at the end, especially. Kind of need to go take a shower or something like that. Well, everybody, thank you so much. That was a great first week for February. Next week, we are going to work with, I think it's Georgia O'Keeffe. I think it is. Who is not on my list of slides, but she's definitely an abstract artist. She's definitely an original. There's nobody, you see a Georgia O'Keeffe painting, you know you're looking at a Georgia O'Keeffe painting. So we're gonna dive into that next week. So hopefully I'll see you all then. Thank you so much for coming, and have a great rest of your night. Take care. See you next week.